The opinions and suggestions expressed on the following program are solely those of the participants and not necessarily endorsed by program sponsors or any radio station, media company, or platform broadcasting this program. The following program is a product of Causeway LLC. The information in this broadcast is not intended as investment, tax, or financial advice. Matthew Moore is not a licensed investment advisor and speaks solely from his experience and opinions. All information in this broadcast is for entertainment or educational purposes only. Matthew Moore, Causeway LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program is not responsible for the success or failure of any person's investment decisions or purchases. Matthew Moore, Causeway LLC, and the company or platform broadcasting this program makes no and expressly disclaims all representations, warranties, and guarantees with respect to this broadcast and its sponsors. Investing in any market is inherently risky and can be financially dangerous. Invest at your own risk.
Government officials we will continue to keep you informed as this story unfolds.
Welcome to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore, the Bitcoin-focused radio show that's waking the masses to the fiat money Ponzi scheme. Money is changing, and your freedom is at stake. So stick around and learn how to empower yourself for this new digital age. Now, here's your host, Matthew J. Moore.
Welcome, America, and welcome, world. That's right, we are global, even though we're syndicated here in America. And no matter where you are, or who you are, or what you're doing, I want to welcome every single one of you Bitcoin lovers, newbies, and experts. You are now listening to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore, and yes, we are one of the only syndicated radio shows in the country that is dedicated to that beautiful topic known as Bitcoin, a show where you're going to learn about things like money, liberty, history, technology, energy. There's so much that goes into this topic that I promise you, if you stay tuned and you listen to the show, you're going to walk away learning about something, because we also bring on some very influential, very smart people who are doing and moving and shaking things in the world of Bitcoin. And today is no exception. And I want to start this show off with this. You may have been watching the news. Maybe you were watching CNN, Fox, maybe some kind of mainstream outlet, and you heard about some lawsuits, right, coming from the SEC. Well, the mighty U.S. bureaucracy has finally pulled the trigger, right? Power-hungry Gary Gensler over at the Securities and Exchange Commission is throwing down that lawsuit gauntlet against exchanges like Binance and the American-based exchange Coinbase. And, you know, here's the question. Is this the end of the cryptocurrency space as we know it? Or does it just mean that most of this industry just kind of moves off to different jurisdictions? Or maybe it's just simply reaffirming what many of us in the space already know, and that is Bitcoin is king, and compared to all these other cryptocurrency assets that, some would say are securities, Bitcoin's definitely not a security. The debate is plentiful, though, no doubt, and in the coming months or years, the courts will finally rule on some of these issues as all of these lawsuits unfold. So in light of all this, we're going to be bringing on a lead analyst from one of the most epic Bitcoin companies in the world, a man who might have an idea. He might have an idea of what to expect in the coming weeks and months, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation. But before we do, I have to give a shout out to my producer, Brian LaRue. If you heard that awesome, sexy intro, right? If you want something like that for your podcast, for your radio show, maybe you're a musician, maybe you got a track that you want to get mixed, you want to get something done, go check him out at beyonduproductions.com. He is for hire. I hired him. He's amazing. He helps me all the time. He's a beautiful person. So go check him out, beyonduproductions.com, if you have any of those needs. All right, without any further delay, today on the line we have, like I said, lead analyst. His name is Sam Callahan from the one, the only, Swan.com, and he is going to give us his take on all of this SEC exchange mayhem and what it might mean for Bitcoin going forward. Sam, for our listeners in Los Angeles, Atlanta, Seattle, and beyond who may be unfamiliar with you, your work, Swan, can you please share with everybody who you are and what you do in your own words?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. Really happy to be on the show right now. My name's Sam Callahan. I'm the lead analyst at Swan Bitcoin. We're at swan.com. We are a Bitcoin financial services company. And so you can buy Bitcoin through us. We service all kinds of investors, including financial advisors, businesses, high net worth individuals. And so I'm the lead analyst. So I do a lot of research. I host our podcasts. I do a lot of writing. I'm on Twitter a lot, kind of sharing my thoughts about the market. and I'm just kind of analyzing things to see where we're headed in the future, keeping a close eye on not just Bitcoin, but the macro picture as well, and how Bitcoin fits into that. So that's my job in a nutshell, and that's Swan in a nutshell.
Well, Sam, we greatly appreciate the labor of love that you're involved in. But before we dive into the nitty-gritty, I would like to hear about kind of your personal orange pill moment into Bitcoin. We kind of want to personalize this, get our listeners to understand who you are, why you're doing what you're doing. So where did you first hear about Bitcoin, and what got you so passionate?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like my upbringing. I was always really interested in financial history. And so I studied the history of like financial crises in the past, as well as central banking, really since I was a teenager. And then when I was 2015 or so, I saw this film. Called Dope, and it's a good movie. I'd recommend people go check it out. But it's an indie film. And in the film, there's this kid who is trying to go to college, and he finds a bag of drugs, and he has to sell the drugs, and he uses Bitcoin to sell the drugs. So this was back in like the Silk Road era of how everyone thought, Bitcoin was only used for criminals. And this was 2015. But that's where I first, heard about it. I was watching that movie, and I was like, that's weird. I thought Bitcoin kind of disappeared, or I didn't know it was a thing. And then here I see it in this movie. And then from there, I started to read about it. And then I really, really became fascinated with it come 2017. After I read this book called Digital Gold and saw this Netflix documentary. And then I just got so fascinated with Satoshi Nakamoto and how nobody knew who this guy was. I just thought it was a really interesting story. It read like a movie itself. And it still fascinates me. Like, who was that? Who created Bitcoin? Nobody knows. And that's what initially got me into it. But I think my study of central banking and then the traditional financial system and the history and the crises really gave a framework for me to understand Bitcoin really well. Like, I understood, like, okay, this is the problems that it solves. And that's why I got really, really excited about it, because when I studied central banking, it was a dark rabbit hole to go down, because I thought, there's no solution here. Like, these people have so much power. They become ingratiated with the regulators and the politicians, and they just keep printing and they keep increasing the debt, and there's no stopping them. But then this crazy thing called Bitcoin came around, and I just immediately saw it as a solution, and I had to be a part of it. So really, that's kind of where I started to really get involved in the industry and the community, was in 2017, and I haven't looked back since.
That's a beautiful story. I kind of have something similar. It was Ron Paul in 2008 that got me into the Federal Reserve and the whole, shenanigans there, and just kind of went down that rabbit hole. And eventually, I heard about Bitcoin, was kind of on the sidelines, watching it from afar, kind of skeptical, right? And as most people are when they first hear about it. But then I started doing my homework, and in early 2017, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not going anywhere. This is actually kind of cool. This is revolutionary. I got to be a part of this. And so I totally relate to that, and I think it's really, really cool. But you're obviously involved in the space to an extent that most people are not. You're working, you're doing all this analysis. What do you hope to accomplish by kind of just being a part of all this? I mean, are we just kind of like in this pivotal moment in history? I mean, are you doing this for like a more altruistic motive?
Certainly a part of it. I really do see Bitcoin as a revolutionary technology. And I think it could help solve a lot of the problems that exist in our society today. The meme is fix the money, fix the world. And I look at kind of these bigger societal issues like wealth inequality, inflation, all these things that I think Bitcoin can solve. And I think it's up to me to kind of educate people, because I've done the work. I kind of understand this stuff really well. And I think education is all that's kind of stopping us from getting the next, big wave of people into Bitcoin to help protect their purchasing power over time. And Bitcoin is just an amazing technology. I mean, straight up, it's a way to send value without anybody's permission anywhere in the world instantly. And it's just like the internet. You could send information. It democratized information. Bitcoin democratizes value over the internet. It's the first digital money. And it's amazing technology. And I think Lead to all of these kind of productivity gains and make life easy for a lot of people around the world and help increase financial access and financial inclusion. And so I think it's just a huge beneficial technology that deserves to get spread. And if I can help through that, through education and my research and helping people understand this technology, I think that's a worthy use of my time and resources.
Okay, well, let's get into this. Okay, let's talk about exchanges. Recently, we've had the cryptocurrency exchanges like Binance and Coinbase get hit with lawsuits by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Some people kind of were on their edge of their seats expecting something like this to eventually happen. But despite what one feels about Coinbase, which is based here in America, along with this idea of, and I'm going to use the word poop coins because we can't use the real word on radio, but poop coins being unregistered securities, despite how one feels about it, whether they're for it or against it, whether they're a Bitcoin maxi or not, it is so ironic to me that the SEC let an unregistered broker like Coinbase IPO in April 2021. I mean, Sam, does that sound like the SEC was really protecting investors?
Well, there's kind of a couple ways to look at that. Like, certainly I could understand that viewpoint with letting Coinbase IPO and operate in the United States. I mean, they started listing these tokens really en masse after 2018. And they asked for regulatory clarity from the SEC multiple times, but then they kind of just created their own scoring framework, didn't wait for clarity, and decided to list them anyway on their platform to increase their revenue. So they knew the risks they were taking when they listed these cryptocurrencies, let's just say, these cryptocurrencies with regulatory risks where you didn't really know if they were securities or not under the rule of the law. And in the S1, Coinbase knew the risk factors. I mean, it's written in there. They say, if any digital asset available on our platform is deemed to be a security under federal or state security laws, or if we are deemed to be engaged in activities that require registration as a broker or dealer under such laws, our business operating results and financial condition could be adversely affected. They wrote that in their S1 when they were registering to go public. And when they kind of initially sent that S1 filing to go public, they had certain language in there. And the SEC came back to them and said, listen, you guys are doing your own scoring system with these cryptocurrencies to decide whether or not they're securities before you list them. But that's not not a legal test. That's not the rule of law. That's just your, self-regulation. And you think it's okay, but we don't think it's okay. And we could come back and say it's a security. And they said, okay, we need you to change that language in the S1 filing report. They did change the language and they identified the risk factors and they knew this was possible. And then they went public anyway. So the SEC kind of told them this could happen and they did it anyway. So that's kind of my take on that. If it was hypocritical or not, Coinbase knew the risks and the SEC could have been more clear and could have communicated better. Sure. But they did tell Coinbase that this was a possibility.
Well, on another note, I mean, the Binance, this is a little bit more blatant, but the Binance chief compliance officer, for the Binance exchange in 2018 was quoted saying that we are operating an effing unlicensed security exchange in the USA, bro. What's your take on that statement? Will more exchanges be in the crosshairs of this move of the U.S. bureaucracy here? I mean, and I'm bringing this up because obviously there's some players in the space that that kind of knew this was coming, and they're just kind of like, caution to the wind, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Binance and Coinbase should really be mentioned in the same breath because the charges against Binance are much more serious than Coinbase's. Coinbase, was charged with running an unregistered exchange, broker, and clearinghouse because they listed some of these cryptocurrencies that are deemed securities, as well as they ran a staking program where they pooled assets on behalf of the clients and then put them into the staking protocol. And then they got a reward and they gave it out to the clients. And that whole proof of stake product for Coinbase was deemed a security from the SEC. So that's Coinbase. Binance, on the other hand, Binance was charged with not only both of those things, but also misleading investors and commingling and diverting their funds to offshore trading firms that were owned and controlled by the CEO. And then those trading firms were accused of manipulative trading on the platform itself. And so those are very, very serious charges and a lot more nefarious than Coinbase. And then at the same time, they were also charged with issuing their own security through their BNB token and their BUSD token. And so they created their own token, and then they used that token to kind of pump their asset value up of the entire company. And so those are much different charges compared to Coinbase. And I think that the two should be separated.
Okay, well, yeah, that most people probably don't know those details, so those are all good things to bring up, especially with the listeners here. So at large, though, many Bitcoin maximalists they don't actually use these platforms, nor do they trade poop coins, right? So however, how do actions like this? This is my thinking here. I come at things. I'm a very libertarian minded person. A lot of times I don't care what people do. If they make stupid decisions, they're going to make stupid decisions. But here's my thing. Whether here in America, they try to stop people from buying and trading these items, like there's VPNs, there's decentralized exchanges, there's atomic swaps, there's international platforms still willing to take on US customers without KYC process. I mean, at the end of the day, America is just a small part of this global ecosystem. And are they going to be deterred? Is it just going to become harder for them to do these things? Like, how do you see this evolving in America?
Yeah, well, I don't think the SEC is, these enforcement actions really stop people in general. They don't really stop fraud either. Like if you look back in history, the SEC hasn't really done a good job of stopping fraud. I mean, you could go back to Bernie Madoff, who was the head, was one of the biggest frauds. And so people get around these things. I think these laws are in place to try to protect investors because, I think it comes down to like marketing, and you can be really critical of some of the marketing around these cryptocurrencies at the behest of these exchanges and how they marketed them to retail investors. Did they actually disclose the risks involved? I don't know. I don't think so. And then, in terms of people getting around them, like Binance US, when it opened up, the reason they did that was they were getting a lot of regulatory pressure for not registering as an exchange and serving US customers. So they said, okay, we'll comply. We're going to open up a separate business called Binance US, which turned out to not be a separate business at all. But that's neither here nor there. But Binance US comes on and, they said that they wouldn't let the US customers trade on the big exchange, Binance.com. But at the same time, they basically had things on their website teaching US users how to use VPNs to get around that. And so VPNs just obfuscate your geographical location of your IP address, and you can just get around these rules to access these platforms. And then you have things like decentralized exchanges, and it's going to be really hard to regulate, especially when it looks like these regulators are so far behind the eight ball in terms of getting things under control here, because technology moves so much faster than these regulators.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I mean, I don't mean to interrupt here, but we do
at the same time, but at the same time, these rules are in place. Like if you believe that, penny stocks shouldn't be shilled to elderly folks on the phone and they shouldn't be harmed because of that. If these digital assets fit under the same.
Well, we gotta run to break here. I'm sorry, Sam, but we'll be right back with more great content with Sam. Stay put. We'll be right back.
Do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Are you being audited or investigated? Has the IRS sent you a letter demanding payment? You may not owe what they claim. Make this free call to the tax doctor now. Let them negotiate with the IRS on your behalf.
800-262-4182. 800-262-4182. That's 800-262-4182.
Okay, I'm talking funny because I'm in the witness protection program. I have too much credit card debt and I don't want people to find me.
Okay, I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about credit card debt. Right, those plastic things that we all have in our wallet. Are you in your 50s or 60s and you're still carrying around a mound of credit card debt? Wouldn't it be nice to start banking that money and save a little money for retirement down the road? We help people restructure their credit card debt all the time. We show people how they can get out of credit card debt in months, not years. Listen, you'll be carrying around credit card debt for the rest of your life unless you deal with it right now. We offer a free consultation so you can learn how you can finally wipe out your credit card debt and start saving money. Give us a free call right now.
Call Debt Solutions Network now. 800-593-0298. 800-593-0298. That's 800-593-0298.
What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.
Short-form video content is taking over social media, and with only seconds to capture someone's attention, our team can help you stand out from the crowd. At Sooner Marketing Solutions, we'll produce and publish engaging TikToks, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. If you feel like you're falling to the wayside and missing out on the exposure that you deserve, click the link in the description to get Sooner results now.
All right, welcome back, America. It's round 2, ding, 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 of America's Bitcoin-focused radio show. That's right, we are on traditional radio here, and whether you're a Bitcoin lover, newbie, or expert, we have just a little bit of something for everybody, or at least we try to, right? Well, I want to welcome, even those skeptics. We got a lot of skeptics that are still out there. We know adoption's growing, but we hope you stick around because this show, we made it for you. We made it for everybody, and yes, like I was saying earlier, we're one of the only syndicated shows that's trying to get this content out to the masses. We're throwing a large net, trying to, get an older generation that listens to talk radio to check this thing out called Bitcoin, because it is changing the world. It's not going to change the world. It already is changing the world. And so you're going to learn about topics that might just blow your mind. Things like, where does money come from? What gives it value? How does it relate to your freedom? How does history, be a part of all this? Because you got to understand the past and understand where we're going. Technology, energy, it just keeps going. The list just goes on and on. But here's my thing. Today we've been having a great discussion about the U.S. government and their actions. They've basically been attempting to, quote unquote, protect investors. But actually, a lot of people are looking, from the outside in, they're looking at things and they're like, man, this just looks like mayhem and chaos. I mean, earlier on we had the whole FTX debacle. Now we got the SEC throwing down some, lawsuit gauntlet here. But as a, kind of a libertarian-minded individual, like I stated earlier, my personal opinion, I think it's a little bit too late, pointless in my opinion. But hey, let people make their own decisions. Let Bitcoin do what's going to do, or what it's going to do, right? Because we don't necessarily need to play favorites. Why? In my opinion, because Bitcoin is going to do what winners do. Bitcoin's going to win, baby. You can't stop the honey badger of money. You guys remember that meme, the honey badger? Well, Bitcoin's got a honey badger meme. I'd encourage you to go Google that. Check that out, right? Well, in the light of all of this cryptocurrency exchanges getting hit with the lawsuits for essentially selling unregistered securities and some other shenanigans, we brought on a lead analyst from one of the most epic, and I mean one of the most epic Bitcoin companies in the world, a man who might have an idea of what to expect in the coming weeks and months. And I'm not going to keep him on hold here because today on the line, we've got lead analyst Sam Callahan from one of the, like I said, the one and only Swan.com. Sam, since this is radio and people are jumping in their cars, they're constantly tuning in at randomly times, please just give us a little bit of a nugget of who you are, what you do, so our new listeners can understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. I'm the lead analyst at Swan Bitcoin. We are a Bitcoin financial services company. I do all the research, a lot of the content, a lot of the writing for our clients, as well as host our podcast. So I'm always have a pulse over the Bitcoin industry as well as the broader macro markets.
I love it. I love it. Well, I didn't get you a chance to shill Swan, so I want you to go ahead and tell us about Swan, why people should care.
Yes, I think Swan, we made it extremely easy to buy Bitcoin, whether you're an individual, a business, or you use a financial advisor. We built a product that makes it so easy that your grandma can buy Bitcoin. We have really competitive fees, different ways you can buy it. You can just buy it all at once, or you can set up like, hey, I want to buy $20 a week, $20 a day, $20 a month. And you can just let that go and forget about it. And then we also have free withdrawals. So automatically you can take the Bitcoin off the exchange, which is really a differentiator between other exchanges. And then lastly, when you buy Bitcoin with us, it's held in a trust under your name. And that's a really big, important detail because we don't take that Bitcoin and turn around and gamble with it like some of these other exchanges. We just hold it for you in a trust. It's sitting there. If anything, happens legally, you have the right to that specific Bitcoin. And so it's a lot safer way to hold Bitcoin until you're ready to take self-custody of it. And then when you do that, it's free. And so that's kind of what differentiates Swan. And then we have a ton of educational resources on our website. So swan.com, and you can explore it all.
You know, those are all excellent points and definitely things that people need to consider, especially if you're new to the space. You know, their approach is a more conservative play here. It's a better bet. And you know what? I'd highly encourage you, go check them out at swan.com. They really got it going on. But Sam, I want you to do this for our listeners here. A lot of people are tuning in and they've probably heard of Bitcoin. They've probably heard of, other poop coins, right? Or other things going on in the space. But I want you to give our listeners the best pitch on why you think Bitcoin is king. Tell us why Bitcoin will be around for years, in your opinion, despite maybe SEC actions. And, to me, it seems like Bitcoin is safe in the eyes of the SEC.
Yeah, well, you touched on the regulatory clarity. Bitcoin is a commodity. It fits the definition of a commodity really well, and that's what multiple regulators have said. There's no issuer. You literally mine it, and it's scarce. And so Bitcoin is different from all these other cryptocurrencies because there's no founding team. It was the first one, and it's from an anonymous individual who's no longer with us, right? And so over time, since it is the first one, it has first mover advantage, and it has a network effect. And so what that means is that it's built a reputation over time because it's never been hacked. It's the most secure computer network in the world, the most secure cryptocurrency in the world, and that's not even debatable. This network effect, and what I mean by that, is it has all these users, miners, developers, investors, and this becomes a self-reinforcing cycle of growth over time. And since Bitcoin is scarce and there's only limited supply, if adoption continues, there's really only one way the price can go up. And so it goes down to decentralization when we talk about why it's secure. Bitcoin is decentralized. There's no single entity or organization that has control over the network. And this ensures a level of trust and security that appeals to users and keeps them safe. And that decentralization actually leads to more security, but also protects that 21 million coins. If it's not centralized or not decentralized, and there's a centralized group of people that can change the rules of the protocol, they can change the supply. Well, you can't really trust that it'll always be scarce in the future. But with Bitcoin, since it is decentralized, you know that nobody can change that ever. And so when you have that certainty of the monetary policy, when you know that there's only ever going to be 21 million and that's never going to change, that makes it a good store of value and maintains its value over time. And so, like you said, the regulatory and legal clarity, the network effect, the fact that it has a finite supply that is supported by its decentralization, the fact that it's the most secure, all of those reasons make it, I think, the king. And I don't see that changing anytime soon.
I concur with you on this, and you like you said, the regulatory clarity definitely important for a lot of people here. But this is kind of like I want to get your personal opinion on this. I mean, right now we see the U.S. government going after other cryptocurrency projects, and but it's and even the exchanges like we're talking about earlier. But if central bank digital currencies are in the future, if that's the goal, if that's what the government wants to try to do we need to be worried about the government turning over its teeth and aiming it at Bitcoin at any point, or even our ability to self-custody? Because even though Bitcoin is a commodity money, like gold is a commodity money or was a commodity money, however you want to look at it, eventually, the government was like, hey, we don't like this thing called gold. We'd like to jump into this thing called fiat money. Is there any concern there?
I think you certainly have to have some concern, but when you understand Bitcoin, you realize that it would be very futile for the government to try to ban it. And I think the days of that are long gone, that would be effective. And you brought up gold. I mean, even in 1933, where they banned gold, made it illegal to own, it was really, really difficult to enforce. And with Bitcoin, I mean, I can have 12 words in my head. Like, good luck trying to get it. The digital nature allows people to take self-custody of it. And I don't think people really wrap their heads around how powerful of an idea that is, that I can have my entire net worth memorized in my head. And when if the government did go after it, if they tried to ban it, if they did try to go after the on-ramps and off-ramps, this is when game theory comes into play, where we live in a world that is so connected digitally, and people can work from home now, and people can vote with their feet, and other jurisdictions around the world are going to see this technology and they're going to embrace it. And they're going to say, hey, come to us. Like, if the United States doesn't like you, come to us, and we like Bitcoin, and we're going to take all these, smart people, all this talent, all this innovation, and we're going to support it, and we're going to benefit our own economy. And it's like the United States can only ban themselves from Bitcoin, and other countries would benefit from it over time. And so the global nature of Bitcoin, I think, comes into play, as well as the game theory, when it comes to the government coming after it. And this is when you get this turning point, inflection point, where the government can decide, they can embrace this technology, or they can cut themselves off from it at their own expense. And it's similar to, like, if they tried to cut themselves off the internet. I advise against it. Is what I would say.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sam has hit the nail on the head. He's absolutely right. I love it. That was beautiful, beautifully said. So if you're listening to this, and you better take those points to heart there. All right, Sam, I got to ask you about this, because a lot of people are going to want to know. You're an analyst. Do you give us your take on the next bull market for Bitcoin? Are we getting close to coming out of a Bitcoin winter? What narrative do you think is going to drive this next bull market? I mean, some people are saying, hey, it might be clear regulatory environment for institutions so they can dump more of their money into it. It could be that we've got massive inflation again, or maybe it's something else. What's your take?
Well, I think ultimately the narrative has kind of stayed the same for Bitcoin, whereas Bitcoin is a scarce asset that can be held digitally. And it really is a bet on fiscal and monetary irresponsibility. So when you look at the fiscal situation of debt, I think that's what ultimately drives the next bull market, just like the last one, which is accommodative monetary and fiscal policy, aka they start printing more money to try to paper over the problems that have been built up over decades. And right now, Bitcoin, I see a lot of similarities to 2019, where we're kind of coming out of this year where it was down 75% from its all-time high. We saw explosions of these crypto exchanges and these Ponzi schemes left and right. The Federal Reserve started raising interest rates. All these factors came into play, and Bitcoin had a really rough year last year. And then it kind of culminated with the fall of FTX in late November. And I think that was a really, I'm hesitant to call bottom, but when FTX collapsed, that was kind of a black swan, worst case scenario. One of the largest exchanges turned out to be a giant Ponzi scheme, one of the biggest in history. And the price dropped from like 19 to 15, and then it kind of buoyed up. And to me, that was really a sign of seller exhaustion. And you saw a lot of factors on chain, where you saw a lot of coins move around that time in November of 2022, when it went to basically from short-term holders to long-term holders, from speculators to convicted hodlers. And that's kind of what you want to see near a bottom, is the shift of coins, a lot of and seller exhaustion. And so that is a sign of, sentiment kind of shifting. And then it's not surprising to me that 2023, we kind of shot up and against a lot of people's expectations. Now, coming ahead, there are some, I'm cautiously optimistic, and Bitcoin has had a great year to start 2023. But there are some economic headwinds to consider. Bitcoin is just one asset in the broader macro picture. And there are some economic headwinds. There's a lot of recession fear out there. Really towards the end of this year, I think there's a confluence of factors that might come into play. And if everything sells off again, I don't think Bitcoin would be immune to that. But then again, markets are forward-looking, and Bitcoin's one of the most forward-looking. And so perhaps Bitcoin's already looking through all that pain in the late Q3, Q4, and it's suffered a lot. Like, it's when you look at historically, bear markets, Bitcoin dropped 75%, which is about what you see. And it was a very long bear market, about what you see typically, actually the longest one. And now it's kind of rallied up to 30,000. Now it's kind of consolidating. And there's some headwinds. Like, a lot of people are worried about the debt ceiling, and now that's been resolved. A lot of people think that the Fed is kind of close to done with their interest rate hikes. And so that could be another tailwind for Bitcoin. We got to keep track of the liquidity conditions. But right now, I'm cautiously optimistic, but really I'm expecting it could retest the lows. It could kind of get to the low 20s again, or we could be like 2019, kind of shoot it up from here a little bit, and then it kind of goes sideways into the halving. And that's when things I think get interesting, is going into the halving next year.
Yeah, we've got probably about 4 minutes before we need to go to break. But, that was one of my questions was, you had people in the last bull market cycle on Twitter, like Plan B, who, had these models around the halving, around, predicting price. How much do you think the Bitcoin halving is going to play into this next bull market, as it traditionally has in the past, as some would argue?
Yeah. Well, personally, I think the stock to flow model was very, very silly. It's basically only taking on one side of the equation. Only the supply side, doesn't take into the demand side at all. So I always thought that model was very, very flawed. But when you look at historically how the halving has affected price, there's only a few data points, but the price does seem to rally both before and after these halving events. And basically the issuance of the Bitcoin gets cut in half. So the future Bitcoin gets more scarcer. And so, but really it's about the circulating supply. And so whether or not the halving actually has an impact on the price, or the market just thinks it does, it doesn't really matter. So if market participants are all looking at this event and they think that it impacts the price, I think that's actually what's going on here. And then over time, I think it affects the price over like long periods of time, because the issuance of future Bitcoin gets cut in half. But I do think it could impact the price. But what's interesting is I just think it's going to line up with when the Federal Reserve and the governments are going to have to start turning back on the money printers. I think they're actually going to align again, similar to 2020. And then you're going to have this narrative again where you have Bitcoin actually becoming harder as they print, as the fiat money gets easier, as they keep printing more money. And that narrative's super powerful when it's contrasted against each other. And so I think what's going to be going on in the central banks, while Bitcoin is, quote unquote, getting scarcer, is going to be a really powerful narrative that can drive the price harder around that time.
Yeah, no, I definitely could see that. Some would argue that maybe Bitcoin hasn't, other than its in, conception, really weathered a traditional recession per se. We had the COVID thing, but the response was so rapid with the money printing. The next crisis is always usually a little bit more bigger, a little bit more emergency flavor to it, right? So, do you think Bitcoin is eventually going to experience a traditional recession, or do you think we're getting so close to this end game with the fiat mess that maybe it changes? We got about a minute before we got to go to break, so just answer that real quickly. I apologize.
Yeah, no, I do. I don't think the business cycle is over. I think there will be recessions, and I don't think Bitcoin's going anywhere. So I think it'll definitely be around for another recession. How it performs is another question. You're right. It's never gone through a traditional economic recession. But we saw during the banking crisis that's going on how Bitcoin reacts to fragility in the traditional financial system. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it performs when that happens.
Yeah, and I'm going to be sitting there watching it as well. And if you're listening to this show on the radio, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to stay put, because we are going to have even more great content with Sam, our wonderful guest here. And if you're listening to the show on YouTube or Spotify, iTunes, or maybe even Google Podcasts, no matter what platform you're using, go ahead, do me a favor, okay? Leave us a comment, like, share, subscribe, or post. Disagree, send me hate mail, do something to get the conversation going. I want you to be a part of it, because I think this is all very important information. And, hey, if you've got questions about this, maybe Sam said something today as you're listening to this, and I want to find out more about this. Go to my website, mattjmoore.com. Send me a message, send me a question. I'd be happy to try to answer it for you. And if I don't know the answer, well, hey, I know somebody who does. So, stay put. And if you are listening live, call a friend, tell them to tune in, because if they're in Bitcoin, maybe they were thinking about getting into Bitcoin, this is the show for you and for them, because we make this to educate. It's all about education. And if you listen and you do your homework and you prepare, I think great things are ahead for you in the future. And, we're going to continue this train. We're going to continue the conversation. Again, like I said, stay put. We got another segment with Sam, but we'll be right back.
Do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Are you being audited or investigated? Has the IRS sent you a letter demanding payment? You may not owe what they claim. Make this free call to the tax doctor now. Let them negotiate with the IRS on your behalf.
800-262-4182. 800-262-4182. That's 800-262-4182.
Okay, I'm talking funny because I'm in the witness protection program. I have too much credit card debt and I don't want people to find me.
Okay, I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about credit card debt. Right, those plastic things that we all have in our wallet. Are you in your 50s or 60s and you're still carrying around a mound of credit card debt? Wouldn't it be nice to start banking that money and save a little money for retirement down the road? We help people restructure their credit card debt all the time. We show people how they can get out of credit card debt in months, not years. Listen, you'll be carrying around credit card debt for the rest of your life unless you deal with it right now. We offer a free consultation so you can learn how you can finally wipe out your credit card debt and start saving money. Give us a free call right now.
Call Debt Solutions Network now. 800-593-0298. 800-593-0298. That's 800-593-0298.
What does it mean to be physically, spiritually, and financially free? The right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness, these were the ideas that made America. But what happens to these ideas when America's money becomes compromised? What do you do when the very thing that you're working for day after day is fundamentally designed to enslave you? Whether it was a conspiracy or not, you won't believe what is about to happen in this country. Arm yourself today with the truth and build your life on the foundations for liberty. Rediscover freedom in the 21st century and grab a copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Foundations for Liberty. For just $11.99, you can support this radio show by finding a copy on Amazon or by going to mattjmoore.com. Again, that's mattjmoore.com. Don't wait, because freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.
Short-form video content is taking over social media, and with only seconds to capture someone's attention, our team can help you stand out from the crowd. At Sooner Marketing Solutions, we'll produce and publish engaging TikToks, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. If you feel like you're falling to the wayside and missing out on the exposure that you deserve, click the link in the description to get Sooner results now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with America's Bitcoin-focused radio show, and whether you know something or whether you know a lot, a Bitcoin lover, maybe you're a newbie, maybe you consider yourself an expert, we made this show so you could learn, so you could grow, so you could understand the wonderful world of Bitcoin, and we even welcome all the critics, all the haters. Like, listen, hey, if you want to take the time, carefully, passionately type out an email, an insult, and send it to me, I'd be happy to read it, right? We're here to have a conversation. I welcome everybody. And the truth is, you know, we want you to be educated. We want you to be smart about the space. And we cover current events. We cover things that are happening, things that you need to be aware of, because, you know, Bitcoin touches a lot of things, and it's going to continue to grow and impact more parts of the world and more of our daily life. So on today's show, we've been covering the news about the recent SEC lawsuits that are raining down like fire against many of the cryptocurrency exchanges and crypto projects. Does this signal to the world that things will be changing? I mean, what are the implications? Well, how? I mean, here's another question people are asking who may be new to the space. How will Bitcoin fare in all of this? What should we expect moving forward? Well, today we've had a man on the show who has been answering these questions quite well, and we are going to bring him back up to the show here in just a minute. But before we do, I have to give my producer one more shout out. If you're liking those intros and outros, and you're liking the show, the sound of it, and you want a podcast, maybe you want a radio show, maybe you're a musician, you want to create some tracks, he's for hire. Go check him out at beyondyouproductions.com. He's a beautiful soul who does beautiful work. Okay, well, today on the line, we have none other than the lead analyst, Sam Callahan, from one of the, he's an epic company called Swan.com. They do wonderful work. Sam, like I said, since this is radio, people are jumping in their car, they're going into homes, and they're turning on their radios. Maybe they're hearing us for the first time today. Who are you? What do you do? Share in your own words.
Yeah, my name's Sam Callahan. I'm the lead analyst at Swan Bitcoin, or Swan.com. We're a Bitcoin financial services company, so we service all kinds of clients, including financial advisors, businesses, high net worth individuals, as well as retail investors. So we make it easy to buy Bitcoin, is how I would put it. Like, just as easy as possible so that your grandma can do it. Go to Swan.com. You kind of see what I mean. You can buy it different ways. You can buy it immediately, or you can just buy $20 a day, a week, a month, and just let that go automatically, and it'll just take it from your bank account a time frame that you specify. And that's Swan.com, and we have a lot of educational resources. I'm the lead analyst, so I do a lot of education, a lot of writing, a lot of research. I host our podcast, Swan Signal, and that's what I do at Swan. So go check us out, Swan.com.
I would encourage everybody to do it, and pop out that phone, go to swan.com as you're listening. Okay, Sam, you guys do things a little bit different than what probably most people are familiar with if they've kind of loosely dabbled in the cryptocurrency space. You have a great way of doing things. Do you guys, often see an uptick in activity when stuff like the Coinbase, Binance, or FTX news hits? And is it an uptick for you guys in traffic?
Yeah, we do, honestly. And a lot of other Bitcoin-only companies say the same thing. We see a flood of new users come into our platform when there's a lot of regulatory risk that becomes apparent at these other exchanges. So when the hammer comes down, they got to go somewhere, and they like to go to Bitcoin-only platforms because we took the long view, and we don't have the same regulatory risk because Bitcoin is a commodity, and it's been deemed a commodity. And we kind of knew that all along. And we think that only Bitcoin has any long-term value proposition. And so that's the only thing that we educate our clients on. That's the only thing we sell our clients. And so we do get an influx, and, we even get an influx during the crisis. That's when we saw another big influx of new users. So when the traditional banks started to go down, people started to wake up. They're like, hey, maybe I should have some funds in Bitcoin where I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just lost you there for a minute. But he does make a good point, especially when the financial institutions are having problems. People are looking for a different way to store their money and to take it out of dollars, because dollars in the banking system have been notorious for having issues many, many times, and we've seen it crisis after crisis after crisis, and Bitcoin is an exit. Bitcoin is a way to, steer clear, to protect yourself, and we're going to work on trying to get Sam back here on the line. Sam, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Sam?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you there for a second. You were talking. You were talking about how you guys saw an uptick in your traffic when the banking crisis happened, and I kind of stepped in there when we lost you to kind of emphasize that a little bit. But continue. Yeah, continue.
No, yeah. So we just saw an influx. People started to think about counterparty risks. People started thinking about, hey, I got all my money tied to these banks, and they can go down at any time because they're all fractionally reserved institutions. And you own an IOU at a bank, and you're just trusting the bank to not do risky things with money. And some of these banks did do risky things with this money, and we saw what can happen when that when your money's stuck on those banks. So then we saw an uptick in volumes and new users when the traditional banks came down. Because they started to understand the value proposition of Bitcoin. And that's all we try to do is just, push Bitcoin adoption and be a place where people can buy Bitcoin easily, learn about Bitcoin. We just try to be kind of the Bitcoin Sherpas in between, basically, and just be there for people when they find out about it and they say, okay, I want a part of my wealth here, a small percentage or whatever it's going to be. And then we help them and teach them how to use it, teach them how to take self-custody, teach them security, and then help them buy it. So we do see an influx with both when these exchanges go down as well as traditional banks.
All right. So one thing that you do a lot of at Swan is education. How do you encourage people to learn about Bitcoin? Share with them some of your guys' methods.
Well, I have a podcast. So we do the Swan Signal podcast, which is weekly, where we bring on some of the best minds in Bitcoin. We do Cafe Bitcoin, which is a Twitter space, as well as daily podcast every weekday morning, where we go over current events in Bitcoin, and we bring on a bunch of brilliant minds there too. And then we write a lot of content. So you can go to the Swan blog, and I write a lot of content on there. A lot of people on the team just post blogs. And then we do something called the Bitcoin Canon, which is where people have made kind of curations of educational resources for people. So for instance, there's a Bitcoin 101 rabbit hole where people put together their favorite blog posts, favorite podcasts, their favorite articles, favorite YouTube videos that would help somebody who's just trying to learn it for the first time. Or if it's like Bitcoin's energy usage, well, somebody made a rabbit hole on that, say, hey, these are the best resources to understand the nuance that comes between Bitcoin's energy usage, why it's important, why it's not this terrible thing that makes it out to be in the mainstream media. And it's all right there, kind of curated for you. So you can find that on the app. You can find that on the Swan Bitcoin app, or go to the swan.com and go to the Bitcoin Canon, and you can find all those different rabbit holes that makes it easy to find like curated content for you.
I love it. Well, let people know how they can follow you personally and your work. I mean, you're on Twitter. You're probably on some other platforms. Share with people how they can follow you.
Yeah, you can find my work at swan.com on the blog. You can go to YouTube and go to the Swan channel and find Swan Signal, which is my podcast. But I'm on Twitter most of the time. That's where Bitcoin lives. And so I'm on there a lot, just sharing my thoughts, sharing charts, sharing my analysis. And you can find me at Sam Callahan, so at SAMCALLAH. And give me a follow there.
I love it. And website one more time for Swan?
Swan.com.
Very, very simple. Well, Sam, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's been a wonderful chat, and I love what you guys are doing. Keep it up, my friend. We'll definitely try to get you back sometime here in the future, because I thought this was a great interview. And if you're listening to this show, thank you. Thank you so much for participating with us and learning and listening to what things like what Sam's saying today. It's important. Take notes, because the future is going to change. Things are happening right now in front of us, and I want you to tune in every single week to this show, because, my friends, we make this for you. And until next time, we'll see you next time, same place, whether you're in Los Angeles, whether you're in Atlanta or Seattle or just online. Remember, Bitcoin is changing the world. Don't get left behind. Join us every week and learn how to prepare for this new digital age. All right, we're out.